In 7 days, God created the world. Keep lying to you. I haven't treated myself very well.
Start now.
Hello, welcome to our RecapPlus channel with me, Matthew. Today we will watch a recap movie called 7 Pounds, released in 2008. This is a spoiler content video. So please turn on the subtitle and let's start the story. The movie opens with Tim Thomas making a 911 call, reporting an emergency, and requesting an ambulance in Los Angeles. At this point, the dispatcher asks about the nature of the emergency, to which Tim reveals it's a suicide, specifying that he is the victim. The story progresses with Tim's voiceover, reflecting on destroying his life after God created the world in 7 days. Next, Tim complains about the quality of food in a customer service call to a blind person named Ezra. As the call becomes personal and instigating, Ezra calmly hangs up, prompting Tim to scream names and smash a chair on the floor, revealing a deeper frustration. Later that night at the IRS office, Tim searches online for someone in need and discovers Emily Posa, an artist with a congenital heart problem and significant hospital debt. In the following scenes, Tim seeks out Emily but learns from her neighbor that she left in the morning. Undeterred, he goes to the hospital and inquires about the cardiac wing. In an elevator, he encounters Emily, dressed in a hospital gown. Despite the non-visiting hours, he is denied access by the receptionist. As Emily sleeps in her hospital bed, Tim watches her but leaves when she wakes up. Distraught, he sits in a car during heavy rain, hinting at his internal struggles. The narrative then delves into a flashback, showcasing Tim's once perfect work-life balance. A call from his brother interrupts the flashback, bringing the story back to the present. While answering his brother's questions, Tim becomes more disturbed, avoiding queries about items he took. Tim travels to an elderly care facility to meet Administrator Stewart, posing as an IRS agent. In Stewart's office, Tim overhears him talking to an old lady about refusing medicine. After calming her down, Stewart discusses reducing facility costs while driving a new car. Requesting an extension for a loan clearance deadline, he cites paying for a failed bone marrow transplant. Skeptical of Stewart's ethics, Tim visits the old woman's bedroom. Tim questions the elderly lady about the administrator's character. She reveals that the administrator administers drugs that make her dizzy, and the facility refuses to bathe her as punishment for refusing her medicine. In an act of defiance, Tim takes the lady to the washroom himself, angrily denying Stewart's request for an extension and scolding him for his poor management. Later, Tim meets up with a friend on a golf course and inquires about a doctor. His friend informs him that the doctor has not replied yet. Tim reminds his friend of their plan. After the meeting, he goes to the hospital's cafeteria and observes a young patient eating and playing with his mom. From a distance, Emily recognizes him and approaches. Tim informs her that the lady owes the government a large sum of money. Emily, having just been discharged, explains she is not in a position to think about the debt yet. Knowing the circumstances, Tim leaves her alone. That night, Tim rents a hotel room for 2 weeks and reads an old newspaper about a car crash where 7 people died. The names mentioned in the paper are the same people Tim was screaming about in the beginning. The next day, Tim watches junior hockey players practicing on the rink. He visits Emily's home and unintentionally upsets her by feeding her dog meat. Inside, they discuss Emily's financial situation, health, and daily living. Tim proposes freezing her account for 6 months to buy time without penalty charges. Before leaving, Emily questions why it seems she owes him a big favor, and Tim explains it's because he feels she needs the help. At the beach house, Tim reminisces about happy moments with his late fiancée on the beach. He cleans and organizes the entire beach house. That night, he transfers his box jellyfish to his motel room, considering them the most beautiful creatures he has ever seen. On the same day, his friend meets him in his motel room and hands him a consent form regarding a kidney transplant. While Tim signs the form, his friend confesses his jealousy from their youth. Tim throws him a book, telling him to stop distracting him and concentrate on the promise and plan. His friend tearfully admits the painful nature of the procedure. After this encounter, Tim visits the specialist for child and family services. Tim asks the specialist for information about a person who badly needs help but is too proud to ask for it. The specialist provides Tim with the information about Connie Tipos, a Hispanic immigrant living with her 2 kids and an abusive boyfriend but unable to afford to leave. When asked about the reason for his deed, Tim simply says he is helping. Tim interviews Connie under the guise of dealing with the IRS, discovering the difficult circumstances she's facing. Despite Tim's suggestion that she leave with her kids, Connie's boyfriend becomes upset and kicks Tim out of her house. At the hospital, Tim talks with the coach about the kidney transplant, and the coach expresses joy as there will be no more dialysis for him. Tim discusses the coach's assistance to some players in obtaining college scholarships, but the coach modestly evades the matter, expressing his belief in seeing Latinos on ice rinks. When Tim is asked why he chose the coach, he commends the coach's integrity, emphasizing the coach's good deeds even when no one is watching. Meanwhile, Emily walks her dog and passes by her neighbor's house, where flowers bloom beautifully. The neighbor credits Tim's advice of using banana peels for the vibrant flowers. However, Emily feels dizzy and collapses at her house gate. An ambulance is called, and Tim, now following the blind salesperson he abused earlier, discovers him playing the piano in a public mall. Later, Tim sees the salesman trying to promote piano lessons at a coffee shop. Tim reveals the salesman's name, shocking and scaring him. That night, Emily calls Tim, revealing the events that transpired. Tim heads to the hospital where she is admitted. While talking on the phone, Emily asks Tim to tell a happy story. Tim comforts her with a story about a boy named Tim and his little brother, spending the night at her bedside. Here, he hasn't disclosed his real name yet. In the morning, the doctor informs them about Emily's heart enlargement and the limited time she has left. To uplift Emily's spirits, Tim brings her dog to the hospital. That night, after being beaten by her boyfriend again, Connie contacts Tim. He meets her, encourages her not to be weak, and gives her the keys and directions to his beach house. Connie, along with her 2 children, moves into the safe house. She finds a letter from Tim that includes the deed to the house, giving no explanation and asking her to respect his wishes, not to contact him, not to tell anyone how she got the house, and to live life abundantly. The next morning, Tim takes Emily along with her dog from the hospital. While they travel, Emily tries to flirt with him, but he dismisses her, especially when she asks him about his love life. Tim weeds her lawn as an apology, she accepts it and takes him to tour her workshop studio. She shows him her letterpress printing workshop and presents him the Heidelberg Windmill 1956, which she calls the Beast, but it's not working anymore, and she finds it difficult to find someone who knows how to fix it. Later, they go to an empty field, where she talks about her dreams, which seem impossible because of her heart condition. That night, Tim sneaks into her studio to fix the Beast, along with her dog. He returns home late and sleeps in his motel room. There he dreams about flashes of a car accident, which happened due to carelessly sending a text message while driving. The car veers across the center line into oncoming traffic and causes a multi-car crash in which 7 people died, 6 strangers and his fiancée, Sarah Jensen. He sees all the blood on the road and once again goes to the hospital to donate bone marrow, opting to have no anesthesia during the procedure, an evident consequence of his desire for atonement. In each case, he does not tell the people why he's doing what he's doing, despite being repeatedly asked. Emily invites him for a romantic dinner date, and Tim has his final date with her. He goes to his car to get a gift for her. This is where Ben confronts Tim and makes Tim give back Ben's IRS information, revealing Ben is the real IRS agent Ben Thomas, and Tim stole his brother's identity temporarily. This revelation sheds light on why Tim was following sick people around and how he used Ben's credentials to try and talk to them, really trying to help them out. Once Tim gets back to the hospital, he calls 911 and sets up his final act. Submerged in a bathtub of ice water, Tim allows himself to be stung to death by the jellyfish. His carefully planned act preserves his organs, allowing 7 people to be saved. His best friend, who is a lawyer, has Tim's organs given to the people of Tim's choosing, which he chose from the people he visited or saw throughout the movie. People find out Tim was their donor, learning the story behind why he did the actions. Emily meets Ezra and shows that Tim didn't die for nothing, all the people he knew deserved healthy lives, and what they needed or wanted, they got because of him.